What is an endpoint in Flask? The Flask documentation shows what exactly is meant by an endpoint?
How Flask routing works. The entire idea of Flask and the underlying Vectoid library is to map URL paths to some logic that you will run, typically the view function. Your basic view is defined like this. Note that the function you refer to, at _URL_raw, achieves the same goal, just without using the decorator notation. Therefore, the following is the same. Let's say your website is located at www.example.org and uses the above view. The user enters the following URL into their browser. The job of Flask is to take this URL, figure out what the user wants to do, and pass it on to one of your many Python functions for handling. It takes the path, and matches it to the list of routes. In our case, we defined this path to go to the give_greeting function. However, while this is the typical way that you might go about creating a view, it actually abstracts some extra info from you. Behind the scenes, Flask did not make the lead directly from URL to the view function that should handle this request. It does not simply say, actually, if there is another step, where it maps the URL to an endpoint. Basically, the endpoint is an identifier that is used in determining what logical unit of your code should handle the request. Normally, an endpoint is just the name of a view function. However, you can actually change the endpoint, as is done in the following example. Now, when Flask routes the request, the logic looks like this. How you use the endpoint. The endpoint is commonly used for the reverse lookup. For example, in one view of your Flask application, you want to reference another view, perhaps when you are linking from one area of the site to another. Rather than hard code the URL, you can use URL_for. Assume the following. This is advantageous as now we can change the URLs of our application without needing to change the line where we reference that resource. Why not just always use the name of the view function? One question that might come up is the following: why do we need this extra layer? Why map a path to an endpoint, then an endpoint to a view function? Why not just skip that middle step? The reason is because it is more powerful this way. For example, Flask blueprints allow you to split your application into various parts. I might have all of my admin side resources in a blueprint called admin, and all of my user level resources in an endpoint called user. Blueprints allow you to separate these into namespaces. For example, main.py, admin.py, user.py. Note that in both blueprints, the /greeting root is a function called greeting. If I wanted to refer to the admin greeting function, I couldn't just say greeting because there is also a user greeting function. Endpoints allow for a sort of namespacing by having you specify the name of the blueprint as part of the endpoint. So, I could do the following.
Endpoint is the name used to reverse lookup the URL rules with URL_for, and it defaults to the name of the view function. Small example.
Inside Flask, every endpoint with its request methods mapped to a view function. When you use app.root decorator, you are actually adding a URL rule.
If you have same class name and want to map with multiple routes, then specify the endpoint, so that framework will differentiate between two.
If you want to see more, please consider subscribing.